Hello, my name is Hunter Slatten, and for my environmental ethics final, I have chosen to talk about is it ethically permissible to kill invasive species? For my thesis, I argue that individualistic claims are unsuitable for the environment. Placing too much emphasis on the individual needs of animals can take away from the parts of the environment that lack consciousness. Because of this, I argue that it is ethically permissible to kill invasive species in order to preserve the biotic community. Throughout this presentation, I will cover key terms, why is this important, the land ethic versus utilitarianism, individualism versus holism, Sagoff and Singer, white-tailed deer in nutria, as well as more examples of other invasive species. Then I will finish up with my argument and my conclusion. For my key terms, I have invasive species, which is an introduced organism that becomes overpopulated and negatively alters its new environment, and this can be through introduction to a new ecosystem or spreading beyond its native ecosystem and threatening other ecosystems. Individualism, which is valuing the individual beings as the unit of value. Holism, valuing the ecosystem as a unit of value. Utilitarianism, which is the right action is the one that does as much good as possible. And the land ethic, which is a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community, and it is wrong when it tends otherwise. Okay, so why is this important? It is important to help the stability and preservation of biotic communities, and it is often difficult to find one correct way to preserve the environment, which can often lead to inaction or half measures. Utilitarianism versus the land ethic. Utilitarianism is the right action is the one that does as much good as possible, and a utilitarian would argue that the value of the individual is more important than the value of the environment, and they would argue to not kill an invasive species. Whereas the land ethic is to preserve the biotic community, and a land ethicist values the environment over the individual and would argue to kill an invasive species. Individualism versus holism. Individualism values the individual as the unit of value, and individualists argue that an individual's sentience is more important. Whereas holism values the environment as the unit of value, and holists argue that the environment and its well-being outweigh the individual and its well-being. Mark Sagoff is a notable land ethicist and holist, and he argues that it is more beneficial to sacrifice the animal to preserve the environment and its stability, and he would argue to kill the invasive species. Peter Singer is a notable animal liberationist, utilitarian, and individualist. He values individuals over the environment as a whole. Singer especially values sentience, and he believes that all beings with sentience are equal, and he would therefore not kill an invasive species. An example of a popular invasive species in the United States is the white-tailed deer. Unrestricted hunting regulations in the 1800s led to them nearly going extinct, but repopulation efforts have led to their population rapidly increasing. Their population increased from roughly 300,000 in 1930 to over 30 million in 2015. So they are incredibly harmful because they can eat over 7 pounds of foliage every day, and they are found all the way from the East Coast as far west as Wyoming and Colorado. During the pandemic, Iowans increased their hunting of white-tailed deer and began donating their meat. And the reason they donate their meat instead of selling it is because it is illegal to sell wild game in Iowa over fears of poaching. On a more personal note, being from the Sacramento region, nutria have been considered invasive in the Sacramento Delta since 2018. The biggest concern for nutria is their burrows present serious issues to dikes and levees in the region. The main fear is their burrows could cause the dikes and levees to break, which could cause serious flooding. Seeing as Sacramento does not receive much water, any flooding could present a very serious issue as the region is not meant to withstand any flooding at all. Since 2017, California has confirmed 2,816 nutria have been killed, with a high of 1,239 in 2020. Nutria are especially considered to be dangerous because adults can reach up to 2.5 feet in length and weigh over 20 pounds. A few more examples of invasive species commonly found in the United States are the kudzu vine, the Asian carp, and the Asian longhorn beetle. For my argument, I argue that humans should try to preserve the natural biotic community, and that the environment as a whole outweighs the individual animal. Killing an invasive species is holistic because it works to preserve the environment, and I argue that we should kill the invasive species. In conclusion, I'm in agreement with Sagoff in believing that the environment is more important than the individual. As for what the public can do, an individual doesn't necessarily have to be the one to kill an invasive species. I believe that one of the most beneficial things a person can do is alert the proper authorities so that they can determine the best way to prevent the spread of the species. These are the sources I used outside of the materials discussed in class. Thank you for your time.